Welcome to Crimson Vow Stories, where betrayal isn't the end, it's the beginning. In tonight's tale, Amelia was erased from her family's legacy, but a hidden key unlocks secrets they tried to bury. This is the inheritance she never expected, a twisted story of bloodlines, betrayal, and quiet revenge. If you love stories where silence speaks louder than screams, like, subscribe, and join the Crimson Vow. Now, let the story begin. I remember the sound of the door. It didn't slam. It didn't creak. It clicked. Soft, final. Like a secret that had finally won. That was the last sound I heard. As I walked out of my father's funeral, no one looked at me. Not my mother. Not my brother. Not even my sister. The one who used to braid my hair. And call me the only heart left in this family. I wasn't wearing black. Because no one told me. Because I wasn't meant to come. Because, to them, I didn't exist anymore. She's just here for the money. My mother's voice. Sharp as polished glass. She didn't whisper it. She wanted me to hear. I remember when she used to say, "You're too much. Too soft. Too emotional. You'll ruin everything." I thought she meant my mood swings. Now I know. She meant my truth. The will was read in a room filled with orchids, faux condolences, and the clinking of crystal glasses. To my beloved children, Jared and Cecilia, I leave the estate, the company, and the family trust. Nothing followed. No mention of my name. No explanation. Just silence. As if I'd never been born. "I'm sorry," the lawyer said, not meeting my eyes. "There's a clause related to your mental history." My breath caught. That word again. Mental. I remembered the panic attack. The one they staged to look like a breakdown. The photos taken out of context. The therapist I never met, who somehow signed the papers. That said I wasn't fit to inherit. I was 22. They said I was unstable, unreliable, unworthy. I remember when my brother told me, "You're like a cracked mirror, Amelia. People see themselves wrong when they look at you." I remember when my mother threw away my college letter, told me, "You'd only waste it," and smiled as she said it. After the funeral, I went home to a cracked apartment, with peeling paint, a cold floor, and one teabag I'd already used twice. I stared at the ceiling, trying to remember what it felt like to be someone's daughter. I got rejection emails like clockwork. Overqualified. Not a good fit. No longer under consideration. I started to believe what they said, that I was broken, difficult, forgettable. Then came the letter. No return address. Old parchment. A scent like firewood and jasmine. Inside, a rusted key. A folded deed. A note. 5 words written in black ink. "What they stole returns to you." The signature. Serafina Dane. I didn't know the name, but it felt like it belonged in my blood. I remember my aunt, once, during a drunk holiday dinner, muttering, "There's a woman in our family tree they tried to erase. A bloodline they covered up." We thought she was losing her mind. Now, maybe she wasn't. By Friday, I boarded the 3:12 train to Larkridge, a town so small it barely had a station. The train wound through mist and pine, like it was heading somewhere you couldn't return from. Fog kissed the windows. Memories stirred in the silence. I held the deed like a compass, the key like a promise. At the station, a man waited beneath a flickering lamp. Long coat, journal in hand, eyes that looked through you, not at you. "You must be Amelia," he said. "I've been expecting you." His name was Elias, town historian, caretaker of ghosts. He handed me an envelope. Inside, a map, a photograph of a grand estate wrapped in vines. And the line, "Estate of Serafina Dane, a legal heir, Amelia Yarrow." My breath stalled. I was never meant to know this. Never meant to see this. The house stood at the edge of Larkridge, like a secret waiting to be reopened. 3 stories. Cracked windows. A door that leaned like it had heard too many lies. On the threshold, faintly carved into the wood, "SD. Below it, etched in frantic strokes, "She will return." The house creaked as I stepped inside. Dust swirled in the golden light. And yet, the air felt warm, like something had been waiting. On the mantel, a candle, a silver key, a photograph of a woman. With my eyes, Elias said softly, "That's Serafina. She was betrayed too. Declared insane. Locked away. Her fortune stolen by the same blood that now calls you unstable." I walked the halls like I was inside someone else's memory. Furniture covered in white cloths like ghosts in mourning. A nursery in the attic, where a name had been carved into a crib rail. Amelia. I dropped to my knees. My name, in a house I'd never known. Under a floorboard, I found a journal. Cracked leather. Faded ink. The first line, "If you are reading this, then they failed to destroy you." I sat there in the silence of stolen things, the weight of forgotten blood on my shoulders, and whispered, "I remember everything now." I didn't sleep that night, not because I was afraid, but because something inside me had stirred. Something ancient, something that felt like a name trying to remember itself. The house was quiet, but it wasn't still. Old walls whispered, floors sighed, and the mirror in the hallway tilted on its own. I walked the halls as if I belonged there, because part of me did, even if no one else ever wanted me to. In the morning, the light poured through the stained glass window like spilled honey. It painted the walls in fracture reds and golds, like blood and legacy had finally learned to dance together. Elias met me on the front porch, 2 cups of bitter tea in his hands.
He didn't ask how I slept.
He already knew. He said, "The house remembers blood, Amelia. It's why it called you back." I believed him. We spent the day in the East Wing, the only part of the estate untouched by dust. Sunlight bloomed through lace curtains. Books lined every wall. Old family portraits hung with eyes too lifelike to ignore. One, in particular, stopped me cold. A young woman with raven black hair, a hand resting on the cradle beside her, and sorrow blooming in her stare. Beneath the frame, Serafina Dane, 1913. I looked closer. There was something faint, carved into the wooden base of the cradle. To AMY, my initials. She had a daughter, Elias said, his voice heavy with something more than memory. But the family declared the child illegitimate. The father unknown. The records erased. I asked quietly, "What happened to the child?" Elias handed me a brittle envelope. Inside, a letter addressed to someone named Eleanor. My grandmother. The same grandmother who had told me, "We don't talk about the women in our family." Now I knew why. Serafina had written. They told me to give her up. That a girl like her, born from scandal, would ruin our name. But she is mine, and I see fire in her eyes. I remembered the day my grandmother cried in the garden, without explanation, after my mother told me to stop asking where I got my dark eyes. I remembered her saying, "You're more like her than you know." Now I did. In the attic, I found more journals, hidden beneath floorboards, wrapped in silk. Serafina had documented everything. The betrayal, the manipulation, the deals made by men in shadowed parlors, how they locked her away in a sanitarium, just 1 week after she refused to sign her fortune over to her brother. They called it protection. She called it punishment. They said I was too emotional, too wild. But they never called the men emotional when they drank rage like water. Elias showed me the town records, how Serafina's brother became the executor of the estate after her diagnosis, how he sold her properties, how my family's current wealth was built on stolen inheritance. Asked why no one ever questioned it. He said, "Because people believe men in suits faster than women in pain." In the basement, we found the vault, hidden behind a false wall.
Iron. Cold. Locked.
And the rusted key from the letter fit perfectly. Of course it did. Inside, not gold, not jewels, but documents, contracts, original deeds, a will, a trust in Serafina's name, left untouched. And at the top, to my true heir through blood, not name. My throat closed. On the back of the final page, a signature, Seraphina's, and one other, my mother's. But the ink was forged. Too clean. Too modern. Elias confirmed it. My mother had signed the document to surrender the estate. But Seraphina was already dead when that document was dated. Which meant I remembered when I was 17. And my mother made me sign something after a fainting spell. Said it was insurance. Said it was for emergencies. I never read it. I was half-conscious. I was obedient. I stared at the forged trust papers. She used me, I whispered. She used me to take what wasn't hers. Outside, the rain had begun. Soft at first, then heavy, then brutal. I didn't cry. I let the storm do it for me. That night, I wandered alone again. The house warm with memory and ghosts. In the nursery, the rocking horse moved just once. A floorboard creaked where no one stood. And in the mirror, for the briefest second, I saw her. Not a ghost, but a woman. With fire in her eyes. With sorrow on her lips. With my face. She smiled. And then she was gone. I whispered to the air. I will not let them silence me, Seraphina.
I know now.
And I will not walk away. Elias knocked softly at my door before sunrise. He had found something else. A hidden file in the town's legal archive. A court order, sealed. Signed by my uncle. Countersigned by my father. Requesting permanent removal of Amelia de Niro from the family trust. On grounds of unstable disposition. They took your name, Elias said. Not just your inheritance. They rewrote your blood. And still, they thought I wouldn't find it. They thought I'd stay quiet. Stay broken. Stay grateful for the crumbs. But I remembered. I remembered when my father said, "You'll never survive without us." I remembered when my mother laughed and said, "Some girls are meant to be shadows." I remembered when I begged them to see me. And they turned away. They took everything. Everything except the truth. And now the truth had found its way home. They say blood is thicker than water. But they never mention how easy it is to dilute blood with lies. I spent the next morning peeling through documents in the estate study. Old files. Legal letters. Forgotten birth certificates. The dust tasted like silence. The silence felt like betrayal. And every line I read, cut a little deeper than the last. Elias laid out the papers like puzzle pieces. Some were water-stained, others burned at the edges. But together, they told a story. Seraphina didn't just own the estate. She owned dozens of properties, shares in overseas trusts, accounts frozen after her diagnosis, never legally transferred. They hadn't just buried a woman. They buried an empire. And now, it had all landed in my hands. Elias found a court case from 23 years ago, sealed, then quietly dismissed. Filed by a woman named Eleanor Dane, my grandmother. She had tried to reclaim the trust. She had evidence. But the day after the submission, she fell down a flight of stairs and never woke up. I remember that funeral. How my mother didn't shed a single tear. How my brother laughed in the hallway while I clutched a wilted rose.
She was old, they said.
It was her time. Now I know better. It wasn't time. It was timing. In the back of Seraphina's ledger was a name scrawled in crimson ink. Vincent Hale, a private banker. And beneath his name, "He knows the truth. Keep him quiet." Elias made a call. The man was still alive. 89. Living in a quiet coastal town 2 hours east. We drove there the next morning. The road twisting like everything in my life had. Vincent lived in a small house with a red door and thick curtains. He opened the door slowly, peering at me like I was a ghost. "Seraphina," he whispered. I shook my head. "Amelia." His lips trembled. I always hoped someone would come back for the truth. Inside, he showed me a vault in the floor beneath a rug. Inside were copies. Originals. He had everything. "She trusted me," he said. "When they locked her away, she sent me the full file. She said, if no one else remembers me, keep this safe. One day, the blood will return." That night, Elias and I stayed at a motel. I couldn't sleep. Again. I stared at the ceiling, wondering if grief had a shape, if betrayal had a scent, if silence had a mother. I remembered when my sister told me, "You're just jealous because they don't love you like they love us." And I realized, she wasn't wrong. They didn't. But it wasn't because I was unworthy. It was because I saw too much. Back at the estate, I made a decision. No more hiding. No more whispering. No more asking for scraps. It was time to take back my name. We contacted a lawyer in the city. Elias brought him every document, every proof, every forged signature. And then we dropped the final match. The original trust document, untouched, sealed, and valid, naming me the sole heir. There was one more piece, a memory I had tried to erase. I was 21, recovering from surgery, still foggy from anesthesia. My mother handed me a pen. "Just sign, sweetheart. It's just for insurance." I signed it, not knowing I was giving up everything. The lawyer confirmed it. That document had been used to remove my legal rights. Submitted behind closed doors. Notarized by a man who no longer lived in the country. But now, we had everything. And we weren't going to knock on the door. We were going to kick it in. 2 days later, I got a call. My brother Jared. "What are you doing, Amelia?" he snapped. "You're not one of us anymore." I laughed. Quietly. I never was I?
He paused.
Then lowered his voice. "You don't know what you're dealing with. Don't make us come clean." "Please do," I said. "Come clean. I'd love to watch you drown in it." I remembered when Jared shoved me at the top of the stairs when we were kids, and blamed the dog. When I broke my arm and he got a new phone. I remembered the bruises my mother didn't ask about. The tears I learned to cry silently. Now I didn't cry. I built. I hired a forensic handwriting analyst. She confirmed the signatures were forged. I filed a legal motion. A court date was set. And word spread fast. The headlines were quiet at first. Heiress challenges long-buried family trust. Legacy in question after shocking discovery. Then louder.
Forgery. Fraud.
Fortune. My mother sent a letter. 2 words. "Stop this." I sent it back. Unopened. I remembered when she slapped me for asking what my name meant. And then told me, "It means nothing. You mean nothing." Now I knew the truth. It meant legacy. It meant fire. It meant I was the woman they never expected to rise. Before the trial, I stood in Serafina's old bedroom, lit a single candle, held the deed in my hand, and whispered, "They built their world on your silence. I'll burn it with my voice." I didn't wear black to court. I wore the same midnight blue coat my grandmother once stitched by hand. It still smelled like lavender. Still held the memory of the last time she touched my face and said, "There's more fire in you than they'll ever know, my girl." I carried her memory like armor. Because I wasn't just walking into a courtroom. I was walking into their house of cards.
With a torch in my hand.
The courthouse buzzed with hushed curiosity. Reporters. Whispers. Cold stares. My mother walked in first, wearing grief like pearls, holding my sister's hand like she still remembered how to be a mother. My brother followed, shoulders high, as if his father's sins had made him a king. They didn't look at me. Not yet. But I remembered. I remembered when they begged me not to speak at my father's memorial. Because, they said, "You always make things uncomfortable." The judge called the room to order. My name echoed in the chamber. Amelia Yerodane, plaintiff. And in that moment, I felt something snap back into place. Like the truth had finally found its voice. We began with the signatures. The court examined the forged trust transfer. My signature from years ago. When I was drugged and recovering. The analyst confirmed. The signature shows signs of coercion and impairment. My brother squirmed. My sister squeezed her eyes shut. My mother? She smiled. Next came the financial trail. Elias presented original bank statements. Serafina's offshore accounts untouched. Owned not by the Yarrow family, but by a trust registered under my name at birth. A name they buried. This wasn't negligence, my lawyer said. It was a deliberate theft of identity, wealth, and legacy. I watched my mother take the stand. She dabbed her eyes with a lace handkerchief, spoke softly. My daughter has struggled. We made choices to protect the family from instability. I almost laughed. I remembered when she screamed at me at 13 for crying after school. Tears won't save you. Be quiet before someone sees. I took the stand next. The room hushed. I was erased, I said. Not because I was broken, but because I wouldn't break the way they wanted me to. I told them about Serafina, about the lies, the forged signatures, the vault, the journals, the map that led me home. I didn't cry. They called me unstable. But I was just awake while they were asleep in their own cruelty. After I stepped down, there was a pause. Then a whisper from the back row. She stood, my younger sister, Cecilia, eyes glassy, hands trembling. I have something to say. Gasps spread through the room. My mother went pale. They made me sign too, Cecilia said. I was 14. They told me Amelia didn't want the inheritance, that she was dangerous, that if I signed, we'd be safe. She pulled out a torn page from a diary. My diary, ripped from its spine. It had one line. They want me gone, but I'm still here. Cecilia broke down. I didn't know the whole truth. I just did what they told me. For the first time in years, I didn't feel hatred, just grief. For the both of us. Because cruelty trickles downward like poison rain. And some of us are taught to drink it without question. The judge recessed, then returned with the verdict. This court finds in favor of Amelia Yerodane. All estate assets, properties, and trusts are to be returned immediately. The family will be investigated for fraud, coercion, and forgery. My name. Spoken. Acknowledged. Restored. Outside. Reporters swarmed. Questions flew. Microphones rose. But I just kept walking. Because no headline could capture what had been lost. And what I was still trying to rebuild. My mother reached for me once. Outside the court. Amelia, she said. You don't have to destroy us. I looked at her. The woman who gave me life. And then took everything else. You did that yourself. And I walked away. That night, I stood in Serafina's garden. Candles flickered in the wind. The soil felt warm beneath my feet.
Alive.
It's over, Elias said gently. You did it. But I shook my head.
No.
This is where it begins. Because this inheritance wasn't about money. It was about memory. About the women who were burned quiet. And the daughters who rose from their ashes. After the trial, people asked me what I was going to do with it all. The estate. The trust. The headlines. The name they once buried like a shameful secret. Will you rebuild the family brand? Will you sell it and move on? They didn't understand. This wasn't about rebuilding their legacy. It was about rewriting mine. The house was mine now. But it still felt like hers. Serafina. Her presence lingered in the hallways. Not as a ghost, but as a mirror. A warning.
And a vow.
I started with the nursery. The cradle carved with my initials. The rocking horse with the chipped ear. The lullaby sheet still pressed between the floorboards. I turned it into something new. A quiet reading room. With sunlight on the rug. And shelves lined with books by women. Whose voices were once silenced too. Next was the East Wing. I found old plans Serafina had drawn in her journals. A sanctuary for the forgotten. A house for women with no place to go. So I built it. Room by room. Brick by broken brick. We called it the House of the Forgotten Flame. A place for girls like me. The erased. The doubted. The too sensitive. The too loud. The too wild. The too much. We took in 6 women the first month. Then 12. Then 37. They arrived with nothing but broken eyes and half-finished stories. And slowly, they began again. Elias stayed. He helped run the archives, led healing workshops, taught young women how to read the maps their mothers left behind. He was quiet, gentle, not a savior, just someone who stood beside me, never ahead of me, One night, as the rain clung to the windows, he asked me, "Do you ever think about your family?" I answered honestly, "Not the way they were, but maybe the way we might have been if they'd chosen love instead of control." He nodded, didn't speak, just took my hand, and that was enough. My mother sent a letter after the headlines faded. A single sentence: "I forgive you." I never opened another letter after that. Forgiveness isn't something you declare from a throne of dust. It's something you beg for with bare hands and no expectation. I remembered when she once said, "You'll understand when you're older." Now I was older, and I understood perfectly. The garden bloomed that spring. Wild roses, soft lavender, and in the far corner, I planted a single flame lily for Seraphina, a flower that survives fire and still rises bright. The last time I stood in the courtroom, I didn't wear armor. I wore the same blue coat. No makeup, no defense, just truth. The judge read the final decree. The trust was sealed in my name, indefinitely, irrevocably. "Miss Yarrow-Dane," he said, "you are now the sole bearer of this legacy." I whispered,
No.
"I'm just the beginning." Some nights, I still walk the halls in silence. Feel the floorboards hum. See the mirror tilt. Not with ghosts, but with memory. I think of the girl I used to be. The one who begged to be seen. The one who whispered, "Please love me. I'll be quiet." And I whisper back, "You never had to be quiet. You just had to survive long enough to speak." I don't hate them anymore. My family. They were just a sickness that taught me how to heal. Not with revenge. Not with fire. But with something quieter.
Deeper.
Lasting. Now I light candles for girls whose names the world has never spoken. I build rooms for women who've been erased. I sit in circles and say, "You don't need to be anyone's version of enough. You already are." Sometimes people still ask, "Why didn't you take them down harder? Why not burn everything they built?" I smile. Because they never built anything. They just stole it. And what is stolen never lasts. But what is earned, what is reclaimed, what is rewritten with trembling hands and bleeding truth, that becomes a vow. I was never meant to inherit money. I was meant to inherit the silence and choose what to do with it. And I chose to turn it into a house that sings. Reflection. Sometimes, the people who raise us teach us to disappear. They don't say it directly. They say, "Be quiet. Don't embarrass us." That's just the way things are. And slowly, we learn to dim ourselves. But what if your silence is the very thing they needed to keep their lies standing? What if the version of you they rejected was the version that held all the truth? This story wasn't just about betrayal. It was about reclamation. It was about finding your name again, in the ashes of the one they stole. Amelia didn't become powerful because she inherited a fortune. She became powerful because she refused to inherit their shame. She chose healing over revenge, legacy over pity, truth over comfort. She didn't return to take back her place in their family. She came back to end the cycle, to bury the silence, and build something louder than gold. A life no one else could rewrite. If this story reached something quiet in you, something wounded, forgotten, or still waiting to rise, know this: you are not alone, and your voice still matters. Even if they wrote you out, even if they said you were too much, too soft, too strange, you are not what they left behind. You are what they could never hold. You are allowed to begin again, on your terms, in your time, with your whole heart. If you've ever had to rebuild in silence, I see you. Let your story be louder than their memory. Let your light outgrow the room they tried to keep you in. And if you're still healing, that's okay. You don't have to be finished to be free.